Hello, my lovelies. I'm Jenny O, the author with no last name, and today we are going back to talking about the WGA strikes and the worth of labor, I guess. As I record this, the strike is still ongoing, and there are people trying to bring more awareness to the strike, so they're making videos about it and, tweeting about it. And I should not read the comments. That's basically what it is. So we get some really interesting takes about what people feel the economy is, whether or not they're supporting labor or not supporting labor, etc. and so forth. And there comes this really interesting, or at least ignorant, view of how creative industries work and how creative industries are paid and the quote-unquote worth of creative work. So this is not me I'm going to sit here and talk about the economy and the theory behind the economy, and I don't want to get into arguments about how capitalist societies work versus socialistic societies. We're going to talk about the nitty-gritty. Okay. My personal work history and education history is in manufacturing. So I have done at least 3 types of jobs and have been educated in 2 or 3 types of jobs. All right, so I have worked in construction and, and in small parts manufacturing. I have stood and sometimes sat. If I get a stool, I'm lucky. That means I'm doing slots. That means I get to sit down. I have run a mill power machine. I have run drill press. I have stood there and I have done this for hours at a time. It's boring, okay? But it hurts. Your feet hurt by the end of the day. It is tiring and exhausting. Your arm, you're building up a lot of muscle on this arm and you're not building quite as much on this arm. Because I'm such a small person and I'm short and I'm thin. I don't have the leverage. So sometimes I have to use the entire forearm to get that lever to go down. And, if I'm doing any sort of lathe work, oh man, that's like terror on my heart muscles, on my chest muscles right there. You're doing this all the time. It takes, it doesn't take quite as much physicality to run those machines as you think it does, but it does take some physicality. There are things in that small part shop I can't do because I don't have A, the leverage, and B, the right size hands to be able to keep the machine under control. It means that sometimes, for me personally, if I was a bigger person and I had bigger hands, like my dad did have women in the shop who were bigger than me at one point in time who could do that type of work. It's not a gender thing, it was just a size thing. Believe me, it was just a size thing. There are just things I can't do. Okay. Now I've also done sewing work for school, and I have never had a job in manufacturing as a seamstress. I know that sewer is a term, but I look at it and I just see sewer, so I like calling them seamstress and tailors. I have never worked as a seamstress or as a tailor, because there are not actually a lot of those jobs here in the United States of America, because most clothing manufacturing has gone overseas. And if you are working overseas in clothing manufacturing, you are generally not being paid by the hour. Some factories will pay by the hour, but most are going to pay you by how many seams you have sewn, or how much zippers you have put in a day, or how many buttons you are doing. You're being paid by how much you get done. It's just like crop picking. You're not being paid by the hour, you're being paid by how many baskets of food you are throwing into the truck. Sucks, doesn't it? Sewing is boring, backbreaking labor. It's boring because you're doing this all the time. It just totally blanks my mind out. I can't stand it. And so I have also done office work. Office work is a lot of numbers. It takes a completely different portion of your brain than it does manufacturing work. You got to put in all these numbers, you got to keep track of the numbers, you have to balance things, it's a lot of arithmetic. And I was doing payroll, I was doing costing, and I was doing paying the bills. I wasn't even doing any of the ordering, okay? That's a whole different thing altogether. That was a different office lady. And I was dealing with sales tax. And thank God there was an accountant to do the actual taxes. Because I have tried to do actual business taxes for the construction guy, and I was just like, no, you need to get an accountant to do this because it's completely backwards and my brain doesn't like it. But, you know, I'm good at alphabetizing and basic math, and I can do it. And then I've also done creative work. I am a one-woman show. I write it, I create the front covers, that means I do the art, I do the back blurb, which is summarizing, which is a whole different other thing than actually writing the book. Most authors don't like summarizing things. I do a good portion of the editing, then I send it off to my editor to try to catch it, and we still between both of us, we still miss things, but that's okay. You know, gives the book character. And I do the format, which is a whole nother thing altogether. It's a lot of work. And I do not get paid for this. I do not get an advance for this because I'm independent. But even if I did get an advance for it and had, you know, the publisher doing an editing, it's still not going to cover the cost of writing 175,000 words and going through it at least 3 times. Because that's just writing a first draft can be 2 to 6 months worth of creative mental labor. 2 to 3 months is probably a better one, but usually those are shorter. Dawn Warrior was 3 months. Some of my other like 40K stuff that I haven't published yet because I want to have 6 of them, that usually takes 1 or 2 months. And they're still in kind of first draft mode, so I still have to go back and edit them. Oh, let me get this back on the shelf without tipping this over. But there's one thing in common that all these type of labors have. They're exhausting. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting here pulling a lever. It doesn't matter if I'm doing books, doing all the math. And it doesn't matter if I'm sitting here writing something completely out of my head. It's all tiring. It's all labor. And none of it is really worth more than the other. There is no more intrinsic worth in me pulling a lever than there is in the intrinsic worth of me writing a book. It's still work. It's still labor, and I should be paid for it. Alright, so that is my first point. Every single type of labor has worth. If you don't have crock pickers picking your food in the fields, you're not going to have food. If there's somebody in a coal mine drumming around in the coal, we're not going to have coal to create the metallurgical stuff for windmills. We need to get away from dirty power coal, but we're still going to need that coal to create high-grade steel for windmills. We don't have janitors. We're going to have dirty offices and backed up sewers and broken toilets. And if you don't have writers, you're not going to have actors, because actors have to have something to act from. They're not creating it out of their heads. The writers are creating it. You're not going to have movies. You're not going to have books. You're not going to have music without a creative person, and that work still has value. Just as much value as somebody in a fast food restaurant giving you your food. which is why we created the minimum wage. Because labor does not have different values attached to it. It is all important. All has worth. Not one type of labor is not better than another type of labor. When I work in an office, I don't want to be cleaning the toilets, and I want the person cleaning the toilets to be paid adequately for their work so that they can put a roof over their head, can put gas in their car, can actually afford a car, and can, send their sick kids to school and have clothes and food on the table and, put in savings so that they don't have to work until they're 80. I want them to have health care. Because they are a person just like I am, and they still have intrinsic value and worth, and their labor is worth it. And if we can't afford to pay our janitors, and we can't afford to pay our people who are doing the work that, supposedly brings in the income, then we shouldn't be in business. And I've seen it, the people who, I've seen this, they don't think the people who do the overhead, who are part of the overhead, are, important as people who do the labor out on the floor. They don't see how the people running the paperwork bring them the money. If you don't have those people doing the paperwork, the people on the floor have nothing to do, because people out on the floor, they don't want to be going to purchase orders themselves and trying to order materials and things. They need somebody in the office to do that. But we don't bring in money. So our labor is not quite as important. Yeah, okay. Okay, sure. You can think that, but you think that until you don't have somebody in the office and you don't know how that job goes. I wrote a 90-page manual when I left that job. It's a good thing I did, because nobody else knew how to do it. So here's the thing. So that's labor has worth. All labor. Creative, mental, physical. That's why we have the minimum wage. The minimum wage was created by FDR to cover the minimum standard of living. If you think minimum wage jobs are for weekends and after school, then every single fast food joint is going to have to close down so that teenagers can do those jobs after school and on weekends. That's what you're asking. Alright. Because here's the thing. What we seem to forget. There's two things we seem to forget when we talk about the economy when it comes to labors and unions and striking and things like that. The economy is not a zero-sum game. If jobs fall off, if people quit jobs or move jobs, it doesn't mean that we have, lost jobs, or, more jobs can't be made. There's not a set number of jobs in the United States of America or in the world, okay? We don't, so, if jobs are axed, and, there's not, so many jobs are axed, that means somewhere else in the economy, so many jobs are created. That's acting, it's not a zero-sum game. Acting like the economy is a zero-sum game puts so many restrictions on it and how we talk about it, okay? The reason why we're acting like this is a zero-sum game is because, well, they can only afford to have so many people, so you have to do the job of 2 or 3 people. No. They can afford more. Look. My favorite right now of the millions versus the billions thing is seconds, usually, okay, or minutes. So 1,000,000 minutes ago, we were in COVID-19. We were in the middle of a pandemic. Yay! Not. Well, Yay, because we could see what life could be more like if, we weren't chained to corporations and office life, I guess. We got to see what was really important and what really wasn't. For a little while, at least. Before we tried to get everything back to normal. Normal sucks. Why did we want to go back to normal? But 1,000,000,000 minutes ago was the Holy Roman Empire. 200-something CE. Or AD, depending on if you like Anno Domini or Common Era. The Holy Roman Empire. We act like these profit margins are fixed. That the economy is a net-sum game, zero-sum game. And that these, if they have to hire more people and do more payroll and use different materials and do R&D, that inflation is going to rise because, they're putting out more money, As if profit margins aren't being set by the companies. As if something like Activision Blizzard is not making $2 billion off of Call of Duty, but they're axing their PvE of Overwatch 2, the whole reason why they were supposedly making Overwatch 2. Because what? It's going to cost too much? You're making over $2 billion a year on Call of Duty alone. $79 million off of WoW. I don't even know how much they're actually making off the original Overwatch. I don't pay that much attention. But they are going to, axe their PvE. You know what PvE has versus the PvP? A writing room. So let's say they're paying their writers $35,000 a year. So that's, let's say 7 writers. That's, what, $250,000 when they're making over $3 billion or more in profits every year? It's not a we don't have enough money problem. So they just don't want to pay people. That is like an infinitesimal amount. Let's up that up to $70,000 a year, so these people can actually maybe live in a house on their own, sort of, or at least have less roommates than they would and have to in, what is it? It's not San Francisco, but it's in that area, I think. So $70,000 a year. So $500,000, $500,000 a year in payroll to have a writer's room for Overwatch 2 when Call of Duty, their silly microtransaction nonsense is bringing them $2 billion a year. These companies are setting the profit margins. Things do not have to go up. Inflation does not have to rise if they're paying people properly. And the reason why inflation won't, quote-unquote, rise if you're paying people properly is because those people will go out and they will put that money back into the economy and it will grow that money naturally instead of people at the top holding on to it and hoarding it like they're dragons. You give somebody who is a writer or a prop person or well, some actors, not the top A-list actors, but the bottom, the ones that you keep the whole industry going type of thing. The people who are the people that you see across half a dozen television shows because they're good at their job at doing stock acting, and they're not making the millions and millions of dollars that the movie stars are making, but they're still, because they're in so many shows, they do get a better standard of living, and they're not having to bus tables at a diner, as they're waiting for bit parts type of thing. So those people are taking that money and they're going out and buying a house. which means they have a mortgage, and they're, having kids. So they have, do you know how much money it costs to raise a kid anymore? Holy cow. There's a reason why most of us aren't doing it. It's that we can't afford to do it because they're not paying us enough. They're gonna buy a house. They're going to go out and they're going to buy groceries. They're going to go out and patronize their local stores and put money into their local economy. And, sometimes that local store is Dollar General or Walmart because there's nothing else, because those corporations have run almost everything else out of business. But they're going to be patronizing their local restaurants. When in turn, that means the local restaurants can keep wait staff and have chefs and, buy food. And it becomes the economy. It's the cycle. Whereas you give that to a CEO or a billionaire, they're just going to sit there with it and just count it over and over. You might as well just burn it because it's not going to end up back in the economy. So, once again, the economy is not a zero-sum game. There isn't this top tier number of jobs we can have and a low tier number of jobs we can have. Just forget that. Okay? Profit margins are set by the CEOs, who also set their own salaries. Go figure. Stock buybacks are decided by CEOs. Payroll layoffs are decided by CEOs. So it doesn't have to go up. Now, it wouldn't go up if, CEOs they pay their taxes and accepted a smaller profit margin, that profits don't always have to go up. That spreadsheet mentality that we've got right now. And I do want to mention that part of this is, one of the things that I have seen is a very odd idea of how writers are paid. Screenwriters, film writers, even authors. So most authors and screenwriters and film writers have agents, and agents will get them the jobs, okay? And if they're writing a script and they're being paid X amount of money for a script, a percentage of that money goes to their agent. It's called commission. If I get an advance on a book, a percentage of my money goes to the agent, because that's how that's how an agent gets paid. So they want to be selling books consistently. All right? And then, so you're thinking, well, you're paid $70,000 for a script. That's a lot of money. Well, no, first you got to take that commission right off the top. And that can cut it down to like $40,000. Well, that's still a lot of money. Well, then you're not being paid in one lump sum either. That payment will be spread out over 3 or 4 payments. And then the corporation or the producer or whoever is in charge of paying you will hold out from making that last payment as long as possible so they don't have to do it. So you may be supposed to get like $40,000 for that script, but if you're lucky, you might get 25, 30 because they won't want to pay you the last bit of money. And you think, well, if you write so many scripts in a month, those scripts might not be picked up. And a lot of it also depends on, does the script actually go into production and get made as an episode? If your script isn't made into an episode, then you're not going to get paid at all. So you've done a whole bunch of free work for nothing. And so, you're talking about quality, and you're angry at writers for not, for not liking the source material, whatever. If you are in a mini writing room and you're writing your outline in your script and you don't know if you're going to get paid and you only have 6 to 8 weeks to do this, and how much do you as a employee, do you think you're going to care? You're not going to care to read the other scripts around you. You're not going to care to collaborate with anybody else in the writing room because you have so much time. You don't know if you're going to get paid, so you have to get on to the next job as fast as possible. And then you're definitely not going to care to read the source material if there's some sort of source material to be getting from. Like, I'm sorry, if I'm being paid, I don't know, $20,000 at 8 weeks and I don't have, I've got 8 weeks to write a script, $20,000, it's going to be paid out to me in 3 or 4 payments, and I might not get anything unless it goes into production. I am not spending I'm a fast reader, so, it would take me 5 or 6 days possibly to get through every single book that guy wrote. And I would have to probably track them down and buy the translations myself. Yes, I'm talking about The Witcher. I'm not going to care. I am really not going to care. I'm going to be like, does somebody have an outline of this so I can use the outline, go off some Spark Notes or something? Because I'm trying to keep a roof over my head and not live in a car. That's how these producers and corporations feel. They don't think that creative work matters, it's worth anything, and we are lucky as creative people to have jobs at all. They want to make this into a gig economy, and in a gig economy, nobody makes a living wage. That's literally what your publishing industry already is. It's a gig economy where we get it in advance and then we get residuals and royalties. And most of your authors are not making a living wage. And we're so dependent on our sales. So, we don't know if our contracts are going to continue or keep them in fear. Bleed them dry. So, just so we all know, labor, I don't care what type of labor it is. I'm not, the teachers, go on strike. I'm with you. Nurses, form a union. Do it. Do it. CGI people, definitely form a union. Get on that. And faster would be better. The miners strike, I'm behind the miners. If the railroaders people strike, I'm behind the railroad people. Right now, as I record this, the immigrant workers in Florida are striking the carpentry and the crop picking because of a law that somebody in government made. And I'm behind that because, okay, you want the companies to make sure that everybody has an IE4 and, you're using the E-Verify system and, everybody is, quote unquote, documented. That means they actually had their work visas and everything in order. And a lot of the food and the carpentry work down there is done by people who are waiting for their papers to go through. I'm behind that because if you want to follow that law, if you want to create that law, that means you have to make it so that you can get that stuff done faster. You don't want corporations using undocumented workers, then you got to fix the whole system. And if the undocumented workers are like, we don't want to take that risk of showing up and being put into an ICE containment, whatever, until our paperwork goes through. They don't want to take that risk, and they, I don't blame them. Their labor is important. And if, you want documented American citizens to be doing that labor, then you better be prepared to pay them. Because most American citizens are not going to go out and work in a field for 2 cents a $2. It's less than $2 a basket. Food. It's you're paid by the basket, and it's not a lot. That's why we made things like the cotton gin. It's why there are now machines that harvest crops like almonds and grapes. So, economy's not a zero-sum game. We can always, make more jobs. There's not a set limit, lower limit. Pay your people. Change your profit margins. Pay your taxes. Just very... We're arguing about things that we were arguing about in 1910 all over again. It is just like so crazy to me. I don't know if that clears up anything, but do take care of yourselves. Bless. Stay safe out there. Support your workers. And I'll see you in the next video.